Okay, let's get you started with your first serverless function on Taubyte. I'm gonna go ahead and log in to the Taubyte console. It is at console.taubyte.com. So fill in your email, click on login with GitHub. It's gonna take you through GitHub login and redirect you here. I'm gonna create a project. We'll call it video ping function, and then it's gonna be a private repo. If you want to create a public repo, just leave it disabled. So let's get started. So this will create your repos on the GitHub side, and then clone those repos on the browser and load your project. So technically speaking, like there is no APIs talking to some Taubyte backend. This is a web app that has cloned your repos, and everything you do here is gonna happen on those clones that are on a virtual file system in the browser. And then the moment you push, that's where things are gonna happen. So let's get started here, creating your first application. So you can create resources directly. We call that global resources. Like I can just go ahead in functions here and create a function. But as a best practice, we're gonna create an application. I'm gonna call it backend, and inside this application, we can create our functions. So because we're gonna create an HTTP function, so basically a function triggered by HTTP, gonna need a domain. To do so, gonna create here a domain, and we're gonna just hit here generate a domain. So this will generate a domain for us. That will be like a generated subdomain.g.tau.link. And then we're gonna head to functions and create our first function. So we're gonna call it ping. It's an HTTP. On Taubyte, HTTP means also HTTPS, and you can only make it HTTP if you disable secure only, but we're gonna keep it as HTTPS. So gonna use inline code. So this gives you a little Monaco editor here. It's the editor that VS Code uses. And instead of me typing code, I'm just gonna use a template. So selecting our domain. So we have the name is ping, is HTTP. The domain is the domain that we created or auto-generated. The path will be ping. It's gonna use inline code. This is our code. So understanding the code is straightforward. So this is Go. It's gonna be compiled to WebAssembly. So this is why the package is not main, but anything you want, here it's lib. We import the Go SDK. This will allow us to communicate with the virtual machine. So here, whenever we have an event, which is like somebody hitting our endpoint on HTTP, that specific domain and /ping with a get, it's going to start this function. So this is our entry point, ping. So it gets to ping and it gives it an event. So because we support a lot of events, we made it generic. So we need to extract an HTTP event first. So e.http gives us an HTTP event, and then we're going to write a response that's gonna be pong here. And validate. So right now, all of that was happening in that virtual repo. To make it go to prod, we need to push our changes. So this is what happened on config. So remember, we created an application. and that's our application backend. And then we created a function. That's our function, the YAML of it. At any moment in any of those dialogues, you can switch between YAML and graphically editing the properties, by the way. So we also created a domain, and that's the YAML of the domain. So you can notice here that we're gonna generate a certificate for it automatically, or the network will once it's pushed. This is our function, so that's exactly the code that we used from the template. Then we're gonna call it first commit, and boom. So this is going to push our changes, and doing so create build jobs. So you can see here that I have two jobs that are open. One is for the config that defines the functions, that defines the domain and the application, and the other one is for the Golang code that we pushed. So the config is done, so you can see here that it was successful. Now we're waiting for the code. Meanwhile, we're waiting for the code. We're gonna head to config, since it was built and pushed, to the registry. You can see here how my or a representation, a JSON representation of what was pushed to the network. So you can see that I have an application. Every application has a CID, and then you can see our domain here defined here, and the certificate is auto. And you can see my function here, so it also has a CID that defines it, and parameters that are related to it. So the domain, the path, it's a get, and so on. Now I'm gonna go back to build, see if our code was built. Okay, our function was built. You can see here that it was built. You can download the WebAssembly file and you can look at the logs. But what's more interesting for us right now is heading back to application. And then on the function here, you can click on run, and this will open another window or tab with the URL pointing to Pong. Let's modify that reply quickly here. So modify the reply and say, hello, this is my first function. And boom. Now nothing is gonna happen. Again, if I go to here, still Pong. So what we need to do is push our code again. So you can see here that my code changed the message, and here changed message. Change message. Boom. Alright, so this has been pushed. So obviously, again, this will create build jobs. It's gonna build config if there are any changes, and then it's going to build code with the new changes. Okay, so this is going to take some time. Okay, our code has been built, so it's gonna be a new content, so it's gonna be a new ID, which means that our asset here, CID, was also updated. Alright, so we're gonna head back to here and hit it again. Boom, now we have the new content. So that's it. That's your create my first function on Taubyte. We're going to explore more as we go in this how to build applications on Taubyte series.